Today, we'll examine the development of Adobe. The majority of us are aware of the brand Adobe, although some individuals might believe they overcharge for sure of their items and that there are better alternatives. This has never been the case. Adobe has altered the computing industry in several ways, including products like Photoshop, PDFs, Premiere Pro, and Illustrator. All of this started in someone's backyard garage out of a desire to fill a void in the expanding computer sector. You can see Adobe's ascension to fame in this video and the terrifying account of one of its co-founders being abducted at gunpoint. Welcome. This is Technology Zone, where the home of technology resides. Now let's get started since this story is intriguing. John Warnock and Charles Geschke created Adobe Inc. in December 1982. In John's garage, the both of them launched the business. Now why is it called Adobe? Well, it's relatively easy. John's home had a creek at the back of his house with the name Adobe. This firm's logo was created by Marvel Warnock, a graphic designer and John Warnock's wife. John and Charles established a firm after they left Xerox PARC. John made an effort to persuade Xerox top executives to market a crucial printing technology he and Charles had created. When Xerox refused to negotiate, the two of them resigned. And here's an interesting fact. Xerox PARC was the research center responsible for developing the modern desktop computer and graphical user interface. Amazing, right? Steve Jobs borrowed its building blocks to create the Macintosh. PostScript was the name of the printing technology which these two had developed. It still serves as the printer industry standard for graphics. PostScript was a huge thing back then. The difficulty was that whatever was printed had to be set to a grid of dots. Back then, printers, primarily dot matrix printers, were capable of producing some rudimentary grayscale drawings with rows of pixels. This resulted in output that was blocky and had difficulty with typography, which was a significant setback for printer technology. But then, a more recent technique known as laser printing appeared. For the first time, PostScript coding became the primary driver of these new printers, enabling the typical customer to print detailed pictures. The usage of computers by graphic designers was unheard of at the time, which was another fact. And yet, despite the fact that graphic designers do not use computers, we were introducing a tool to assist them. Any sane marketer would say there is no demand there, and doing this is the most foolish thing you could do. Nevertheless, we accomplished it, and during the following 3 years, graphic designers said that utilizing this little computer would increase their productivity compared to the old method, which would have changed how I worked. In 1982, Steve Jobs made an offer to acquire Adobe for $5 million, but John and Charles rejected it. However, their investors asked them to resolve the employment issue. They thus consented to offer him shares of the firm valuing 19%. Jobs also gave a 5-year license price for PostScript ahead, as well as 5 times the company's then current worth. Thanks to this acquisition, Adobe became the first business in Silicon Valley history to turn a profit in its first year. For usage in their laser writer printers, Apple Computer obtained a PostScript license in 1985. The desktop publishing movement was sparked in part by this. Before now, digital publishing was only possible with prohibitively costly picture typesetters that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. The initial PostScript proposal was rejected by senior management in Xerox PARC because they produced picture typesetters. It was nothing less than revolutionary to think that everything you needed for publishing was a Macintosh and a laser writer printer. It quickly supplanted the photo typesetting industry, which had existed since the 1950s and had been active for a few years. Adobe was thriving by the middle of 1980s, and in August of 1986, they were added to the NASDAQ index. To move up even more, we have Illustrator, a drawing tool with a vector-based interface for the Apple Macintosh, marking Adobe's entry into the commercial software industry in 1987. Here in Illustrator, as the user moves the curve, you can see that something is happening as users move the curves around in both photos and that the preview changes. This is a handy and attractive feature. The Illustrator software contributed to the increased acceptance of PostScript-capable laser printers. Contrary to common assumption, Adobe did not develop Photoshop in-house. Thomas and John Knoll, two brothers, really created it in 1987. The software was written on Thomas Knoll's Macintosh Plus to show grayscale images on a monochrome monitor when he was a PhD student at the University of Michigan. John, his brother, was interested in this application and suggested that Thomas develop it into a complete picture editing tool. In 1988, he consented and discontinued his studies for 6 months. He intended to rebrand the application Image Pro with his brother, but that title was already in use. Thomas will choose the name Photoshop later that same year. His brother John visited Silicon Valley at this time. He would show the application off to the developers at Apple and Adobe. They adored it, and in September 1988, Adobe made the decision to buy the rights to disseminate the program. Maybe a picture isn't worth 1,000 words anymore. Today, the photograph the camera captures might not be the photograph that we ultimately see in magazines and newspapers. On February 19, 1990, Photoshop 1.0 was available only for Macintoshes. Adobe and Photoshop soon became the de facto industry standard for digital color correction. Here's why it was a considerable advancement. Digital retouching was expensive at the time when Photoshop 1.0 was published, and that was only for simple photo editing. In 1990, the cost of the Photoshop program for the Macintosh was $895, and it allowed for unlimited editing. This was unquestionably a breakthrough in digital imaging. Wow, this is an excellent Adobe feature given to us in the computer industry. As Adobe continues to rise in this industry, the portable document format or PDF file format was conceptualized by co-founder John Warnock in the spring of 1991. The objective of this format, according to him, was to successfully capture documents from any program, transfer electronic versions of these documents everywhere, and review and print these documents on any device. John envisaged text searching tools that could look up any term or phrase in his works. He believed that the whole library might be stored electronically. 2 years later, at a Windows conference, Adobe unveiled the PDF and the Acrobat Reader. Before its 2008 release and opening, it was still a closed format. PDFs provide numerous valuable capabilities, like the ability to magnify any document without sacrificing quality, as well as digital signatures. The firm was doing well, but as Adobe's prosperity increased, so did the underlying resentment. Charles came to work on May 26, 1992 and drove into the Adobe parking lot in Mountain View, California. Two guys appeared out of nowhere and took him hostage while pointing a gun at him. The abductors said they would blow up his house and the kidnappers would hurt his family. I didn't know how much they knew about me. Both my life and the lives of my family were going to be in peril, Charles says when explaining the event. I reasoned that the only thing I could do was to be reasonably honest with them. It was obvious that they wanted quick cash. They would hack me up into bits and feed me to the sharks if I didn't cooperate. Charles' wife was concerned when her husband didn't call later at home. She says, "I was really terrified that he had suffered a heart attack. I found it odd, but I knew there had to be a reason. I never thought of the foul play." At 12:30 p.m., her phone rang. The caller informed her that her spouse had been abducted and removed from the country. Charles would be dismembered and dumped at her door if she didn't agree with their demands. Additionally, they said she was being watched and followed, making it more terrifying for her to do an indecisive action. She was being trailed and observed, per se, so she insisted she'd come up with $650,000 and be quiet. She thoughtfully chose to use a public payphone to alert Adobe CEO John Warnock in case he was the next target, since she was too afraid to call from her home. She also phoned two stockbrokers and instructed them to convert shares into $100 notes within 10 days. She would work covertly to alert others, switching between autos and outfits. She occasionally walked because she believed she was being monitored. When John Warnock heard about the situation, he and his wife disagreed on what to do. His wife, Marva, insisted that they contact the FBI, but John felt that doing so would be the height of treachery if anything happened to Charles. In addition to being close friends, John and Charles had been co-workers for almost 16 years. He finally made the decision to dial the FBI. The kidnappers talked aloud about what sort of vehicles they would buy when they had the money as the evening went on. The kidnappers made fun of Charles throughout the following days. After 4 exhausting days of working and talking with the families, the FBI finally had a strategy. Kathy, the daughter of Charles, would bargain with the captivators. She intended to transport the cash to them while wearing a wire and a bulletproof vest. The whole journey, an FBI agent was hidden at the back of the car, sent information to other officers in covert vehicles, and the daughter continued to sob while on the way. She was scared, but this also proves her bravery and determination to save her father. Charles was finally freed on May 31 by the FBI, who broke into the location where he was being kept following a 4-day hostage situation. The two kidnappers, who were 25 and 26 years old, were consequently given life sentences in state prison. Charles was fortunate since the remains of an Exxon official were found in New Jersey the next month. He was kidnapped a month prior to Charles' incident and after a struggle with his captors met a cruel death in captivity. After the horrific event, Charles and his family made the decision to carry on with their regular lives. They did not hire security or flee. Say what you want, but I believe that demonstrates tremendous strength on their behalf. They didn't want to waste the opportunity to live a regular life. And now, the show has to go on for Adobe as a corporation. In 1993, as the aftermath of this incident was beginning to fade, Photoshop was transferred to Microsoft Windows, marking Adobe's official entry into the general market. Now that photos had been mastered, it was the turn for videos. CNN was an early supporter of Adobe's Premiere editing program, which was introduced in December 1991. In 2003, Adobe changed the name of this to Premiere Pro. Adobe After Effects was first developed by a team at the Organization Company of Science and Art in January 1993. Adobe would later purchase it in 1994. Today, the program has also been used to edit blockbuster movies like Deadpool. With the acquisition of Cool Edit Pro, currently known as Adobe Audition, Adobe increased the pace of purchases in the current millennium. And their purchase of its principal rival, Macromedia, included Cold Fusion, Flash, and many more innovations. The ongoing disputes between Apple and Adobe about the compatibility of Adobe Flash on the iPhone, iPad, and other products defined Adobe's 2010 journey. Steve Jobs wrote a blog post titled Thoughts on Flash in April 2010. Here, he discussed his opinions on technology and the development of HTML5. He listed several reasons to ditch Flash: excessive energy consumption, subpar performance on mobile devices, appalling security, and the lack of touch capability. In the end, Steve Jobs prevailed, and Adobe declared in November 2011 that they would stop creating Flash for mobile devices and instead concentrate on HTML5. Nothing improved for Adobe the following year. A breach on Adobe in 2012 resulted in the exposure of 40 million pieces of credit card data, a severe strain on the company's reputation. Nevertheless, from 1995 to 2013, 14 rated Adobe as, quote, an amazing place to work. In October of 2018, Adobe officially rebranded from Adobe Systems Incorporated to Adobe Inc. In 2019, the firm formally began its push onto mobile devices by launching Photoshop, Illustrator, and Rush for iPad. The business generated $11 billion in revenue last year and employs roughly 20,000 people today. Adobe has come under fire for its pricing policies, with the retail costs up to twice as high outside of the US. Adobe Reader and Flash were listed by TechRadar as two of the top 10 most despised software applications ever. I'm confident you've encountered your fair portion of absurd mistakes on Adobe Premiere Pro and After Effects, as have I and many other video makers. Sometimes, things really just spiral out of control for no apparent reason, forcing you to raise an eyebrow. You just have to question why they can't create their production flow such that everything just makes sense without having to navigate through nonsensical options after utilizing a variety of other creative tools, such as Ableton, for instance. Despite this, there's no denying that Adobe Software has significantly impacted every one of our lives in some professional way, from being the first to bring in the era of digital desktop publishing through PDFs, Photoshop, video editing, and more. Charles was awarded the 2008 National Medal of Technology in 2009, and he and John shared the Marconi Prize in 2010. The highest recognition for contributions to information science and communications is the Marconi Award. There is little question that both founders have altered the course of history, despite the fact they currently live essentially anonymous lives. I also had a little doubt that they would remain close throughout their lives, having created such an influential firm and experiencing the Charles abduction. But with that, the tale of Adobe comes to an end. It's a fascinating tale about how being in the proper position and at the right moment, but it's also about seeing opportunities and anticipating the future of a young and developing sector. I'm curious to hear whether any of you guys use Adobe products. If you do, what Adobe products are you using? And when using them, did you encounter problems? Let me hear all of your stories and feedback in the comment section below. If you find this video engaging, consider subscribing and leave a like. Also, hit that notification bell icon to always be up to date with our new video. Again, this is Technology Zone. See you guys in the next one.